The night I learned my husband wasn't the man I thought he was, I didn't scream. I simply went quiet. And sometimes quiet is the most dangerous place a woman can stand. I still remember that evening, the hum of the dishwasher in the background, the faint smell of jasmine drifting through the kitchen window I had cracked open, and the soft ache in my feet after another long day at work. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing dramatic. Just an ordinary Wednesday night in a life I thought was steady, loyal, and familiar. The kind of night that almost tricks you into believing the world is still safe. I was slicing strawberries for the fruit bowl I packed every night for my husband, Daniel. I liked his bowl cold, sprinkled with a few almonds on top. "Keeps me young," he would say with that boyish grin he knew I loved, and I believed him. I believed all of him. The clock above the fridge blinked 7:43 p.m. He was late. Again. But I didn't worry, not at that time. Men run late sometimes. Traffic can be unpredictable. Meetings stretch longer than expected. Life gets in the way, or at least, that's what I told myself. The truth is, some betrayals begin quietly, almost politely. I wiped my hands on the kitchen towel and leaned against the counter, half listening to the dishwasher, half listening to my own heartbeat. It had been uneasy for weeks. A kind of low, slow thump that didn't match the rhythm of my life. But I ignored it. Married women often ignore the first warning signs. Not because we're naive, but because we believe too deeply in the promises we helped build. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one, washing our neighborhood in a soft amber glow. Kids screamed somewhere in the distance, finishing their last game of tag before being called in. Someone's TV played too loudly. A dog barked. Ordinary sounds. Comforting sounds. But inside me, something felt off. I checked the clock again. 7:58. Still no call. Still no text. I walked to the living room, sat on the edge of the couch, and ran my fingers over the seam of a cushion, a habit I had since childhood, touching fabric when I felt anxious. The house felt too quiet, too still. Even the air seemed to hesitate. My phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart lifted. Maybe it was Daniel. But no, it was a message from my sister, Leah. "Leah, hey, how are you feeling? You sounded tired earlier. Want to talk tonight?" I almost typed back, "I'm fine," but I wasn't. Not really. Still, I put the phone down. Not tonight. Not yet. Then, at exactly 8:12 p.m., the front door opened. Daniel stepped in with the same breezy charm he always carried, tie loosened, sleeves rumpled, hair carefully messy. He kissed the top of my head in that distracted way he did when he was mentally elsewhere. "You're late," I said softly. "I know, babe, sorry, work was insane." He exhaled dramatically, dropping his briefcase by the table. "You wouldn't believe the day I had." I looked at him closely. Something flickered in his eyes, so quickly I almost doubted I saw it. A tightness in his jaw, a hesitation before meeting my gaze, a shallow breath, as if he'd just run up a flight of stairs, or as if he were trying to outrun a truth. But I brushed it off. "Dinner's warming in the oven," I said. He smiled, relieved I wasn't pushing. "You're the best." I watched him walk down the hallway, unbuttoning his shirt as he went. I noticed the faint scent of perfume wafting behind him. At first, I assumed it was the hand soap at his office, the citrus one. But this wasn't citrus. It was sweeter, younger. Something with vanilla and musk. Something I did not own. My fingers tightened around the back of the chair. He paused at the bedroom door, turned, and smiled again, too quickly, too eagerly. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, of course. He disappeared inside. And just like that, the night went on. Dinner, small talk, a show playing faintly in the background while he scrolled through his phone. Nothing dramatic, nothing noticeable. Just a series of tiny moments that didn't match who he used to be. But still, I pushed the suspicion aside. Because marriages don't usually fall apart in explosions. They rot in the quiet, right under the surface, until one day, the truth breaks through. Later that night, when he fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The scent of that unfamiliar perfume lingered faintly in the air, clinging to the sheets between us, like a ghost no one invited. I wanted to shake myself, tell myself I was imagining things. But the thing about women in their 40s is, we don't imagine, we sense. We understand shifts, tones, pauses, and silences with painful clarity. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I whispered to myself, something is wrong, and whatever it is, it's coming for me. And I didn't know then, not yet, that this quiet suspicion would be the beginning of the end. Not of my life, but of the woman I was before. Because by the time the truth came out, I wouldn't be the one trembling, I would be the woman he feared most. I suppose, before everything unraveled, our life looked normal from the outside. Comfortable, predictable, even happy, or at least, familiar in the way long marriages become. Daniel and I had been married for almost 16 years. Not perfect years, but steady ones. The kind of marriage where you know which mug your husband will choose every morning, and he knows exactly how you take your tea when you're upset. We built routines together, not because we were trying, but because life naturally curled itself into those shapes. Most mornings began quietly. I would wake before him, always did, and open the curtains just a little so the early sun spilled onto the wooden floor. The house always felt calmer at dawn, softened. I'd make us tea, then sit at the edge of the dining table scrolling through emails while the kettle hissed behind me. Daniel would stumble in 20 minutes later, rubbing his eyes like a child who didn't want to wake up. Morning, he'd mumble in that deep, sleepy voice. Some days he kissed my forehead. Some days he didn't. I never took it personally. Marriage has seasons. On weekends, he'd mow the lawn while I planted herbs in the tiny garden patch near the fence. He liked to tease me about my obsession with rosemary. You'd season the whole world with it if you could, and I'd laugh because, well, he wasn't wrong. We had a simple, steady life. A safe life. Or so I believed. Daniel worked in project coordination at an engineering firm downtown. Long hours, lots of meetings, but stable. He was charming in a quiet way. The kind of man coworkers described as reliable. When he talked about work, he always downplayed everything, joking that he was just the guy who made sure the real smart people didn't burn the building down. I had my own work too, managing customer accounts at a local furniture company. Not glamorous, but honest. And I liked people. I liked understanding what made their homes feel like homes. We didn't have children, a quiet ache between us that neither of us touched anymore. We had tried, years ago. Tried until the tests, the procedures, the medications, and the doctor's gentle shaking of his head wore us thin. Eventually, we stopped trying, stopped talking about it, stopped hurting out loud. But even that grief felt settled, like an old scar that doesn't throb anymore. Our house was small but warm, framed pictures on the hallway wall. A bookshelf Daniel built for me on our 7th anniversary. A sofa that dipped just a little in the center from years of movie nights. We knew where every creak in the floor lived. We knew how to argue softly and how to apologize without dramatic gestures. We knew how to share a bed even when angry backs turned, but still touching ankles. This was our life. Quiet, ordinary, dependable. So when the first cracks appeared, I didn't see them as cracks. I saw them as noise, stress, life. At first, it was little things. Late nights at work that didn't match his usual pattern. Work dinners he didn't want me to attend. Phone calls he took in the hallway instead of beside me. I brushed each one away. It's a busy season, he'd say. The new team is a mess. The project deadlines are insane. And I believed him. Because marriages, even good ones, run on trust more than truth sometimes. But looking back, the shift began long before the perfume on his shirt. It began one Sunday afternoon, months before that night, when we were sitting on the porch drinking iced tea. The weather was warm, humming with cicadas. Daniel leaned back in his chair and sighed, the way men do when they want to say something but aren't ready. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired," he replied. It was a simple answer. Too simple. But tired isn't suspicious. Tired is normal. What wasn't normal was the way he avoided my eyes that day. Staring instead at the fence, at the sky, at anything that wasn't me. It was subtle, like a man carrying a small secret in his pocket that he wasn't sure he should reveal. I didn't press him. That was my mistake. Love makes you gentle in the wrong places sometimes. Another time, I found him scrolling through his phone with a quickness I hadn't seen before, flicking the screen down the moment I walked into the room, as if he were pushing something out of sight. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded, too fast. "Work stuff." But his voice had a sharpness in it, a tightness that didn't belong. Still, I let it go. Even later, when he started wearing cologne to work again, something he hadn't done in years, I told myself he just wanted to feel younger. He'd been complaining about his hair thinning at the crown. Maybe it was insecurity, midlife, ego. Men go through phases, right? At least, that's what I told myself. Until, one evening at dinner, he said something that brushed against my heart in the wrong way. He looked up from his plate and asked, "Do you ever think, about starting fresh, like a new chapter?" I laughed lightly. "Like retirement?" "No," he said. And he didn't explain further. I waited. He didn't continue. He just kept eating, stabbing at his peas a bit too hard. After that, he became more distracted, more distant, more elsewhere. But still, the idea that he could be unfaithful never crossed my mind. Daniel was the man who checked the locks twice before bed. The man who remembered our anniversary, even during the roughest years. The man who brought me tea when I had the flu. He wasn't perfect, but he was loyal. Or so I thought. The week before everything unraveled, something small but unforgettable happened. I had packed his lunch leftover baked chicken, mixed vegetables, and a slice of the lemon cake he liked. I placed it carefully into the container, labeled it because he always grabbed the wrong one, and left it in the fridge. That evening, when he returned home, the container was untouched. "Oh, we had a big office lunch today," he said casually. Didn't need it. But there was no receipt in his pocket, no faint smell of restaurant food, just that same faint hint of the unfamiliar perfume. A younger scent, a sweeter scent, and for the first time, something inside me trembled. Not loudly, not an accusation, just a small, quiet tremor behind my ribs, the kind a woman feels when her body knows the truth before her mind does. Still, I wasn't ready to see it. Not yet. Love makes fools of us all, but especially of women who believe kindness can keep a marriage whole. And so I went on, pretending, cooking, laughing, living, trying to ignore the tightening in my chest each time he smiled without his eyes. Trying to ignore the truth already forming in the shadows of my home. I didn't know then how close I was to the moment everything would break. How one small clue, one tiny oversight, would shatter 16 years of trust. But it was coming, quietly, inevitable as dawn, and when it arrived, it would change me in ways I never expected. I wish I could say the truth arrived dramatically, that I caught him in some movie-style moment of betrayal. But real life is quieter, more subtle, more cruel. The night it happened felt ordinary from the outside. Daniel had texted me that he'd be late again. Big deadline. Don't wait up. I stared at the message longer than necessary, not because of the content. He'd been late plenty of times that month, but because something in the wording felt rehearsed, like he'd sent it before. Maybe many times. I decided to stay awake anyway. I wasn't suspicious, not fully, but restless. A heaviness sat in my chest, refusing to settle. I made tea. Straightened the living room. Pretended to watch TV. But mostly, I listened to the house breathe around me. By 11:40 p.m., he still hadn't come home. When his car finally pulled into the driveway, I didn't get up immediately. I sat still on the sofa, heart thudding softly, as I heard the familiar sound of his door closing, his footsteps, his keys at the lock. He entered quietly. Too quietly. "Daniel," I called out. He froze for half a second. I could feel it, even from another room, then exhaled softly before answering. Hey, thought you'd be asleep. I stepped into the hallway, and that's when I smelled it. The perfume. Not faint this time. Not accidental. Not a whisper on his collar. Strong, sweet, fresh, not mine. Late night, I asked gently. Yeah, he said, removing his jacket too fast. Team meeting ran over. His voice was flat, practiced. He placed the jacket on the hanger, the wrong hanger, and avoided my eyes. I stared at him a moment longer, something cold crawling up my spine. What perfume is that? I asked quietly. He blinked, a fraction too slow. What perfume? The one you're wearing. Oh, he said quickly. Someone hugged me. Carla's birthday. She wears something strong. You know how it is. He said it smoothly. Too smoothly. I nodded, of course. But the lie sat between us like smoke, thin, visible, choking. I went to bed before him that night, but sleep didn't come. My body stayed alert, every sense heightened. Around 1 a.m., he finally entered the bedroom, thinking I was asleep. His movements were cautious, careful steps, the quiet click of his phone charger. The rustle of clothes he didn't want me to hear. I didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. He slipped into bed, turned away, exhaled, and then I felt it, a tremor in the mattress. A small, subtle shake. It took me a moment to recognize it. He was crying. Silent, hidden, controlled, but crying. And that was the moment I knew. Not the perfume, not the late nights, not the phone turned face down. His tears told me everything. Guilt has a temperature. It changes the air. I opened my eyes in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and the truth settled over me like a cold sheet, heavy, undeniable. Something was happening, and it wasn't small. The next day, my suspicion sharpened into something more real. Not anger, not yet, just clarity. Daniel rushed out early for work, leaving behind a half-drunk coffee and a trail of nervous energy that clung to him like humidity. After he left, I walked into the dining room to tidy up, and that's when I noticed it. His work laptop bag was still on the table. Daniel never forgot his bag. Not once in 16 years. I reached for it, not out of snooping, but habit. I planned to call him, tell him he forgot it, maybe drop it off at his workplace. But when I lifted the bag, something slipped out from the small front pocket and fell to the floor. A receipt. A folded, crinkled, still warm receipt. My heart stuttered. I picked it up gently, almost afraid to unfold it. It wasn't from a restaurant near his office. Not from a grocery store. Not from anywhere he normally went. It was from a place I had never heard of, a boutique little cafe on the opposite side of town. And the purchase. 2 iced latte. 2 slices of red velvet cake. Time, 9:27 p.m. Date, last night. The same night he said he was in a team meeting. A slow, hollow feeling opened inside my chest. I sat down at the table, the receipt trembling in my hand. For a moment, I stared at it, willing it to make sense. Maybe he'd asked a coworker to join him. Maybe a team meeting had shifted there. Maybe. But the lies didn't fit anymore. My instincts, the ones I had silenced for months, finally rose to the surface, fully awake. This wasn't nothing. This wasn't stress. This wasn't work. This was someone else. Someone he bought dessert for. Someone he shared late nights with. Someone whose perfume clung to his neck hours later. Someone who made him cry quietly in the dark beside me. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, in the stillness of our home, staring at the truth written on thin thermal paper. The kind of truth that doesn't shout. It whispers, it chills, it changes everything. I placed the receipt back into the bag where I found it. Not to hide it, but to wait. Patience has power. I wasn't ready to confront him. Anger clouds the truth. No. I wanted the full story, every piece, every lie, every timeline. Because a single receipt proves suspicion, but it doesn't reveal the whole betrayal. I needed that. I deserved that. And somewhere beneath the hurt, beneath the shock, beneath the trembling fear, I felt something else awakening inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. A quiet, steady strength, a slow-burning resolve, a version of myself I didn't know I still had. The woman I would soon become. The one Daniel would come to fear. But that part comes later. For now, all I had was a receipt, and a truth I could no longer unsee. I wish I could tell you I confronted him immediately, that I stormed into his office, waving the receipt in the air, demanding names and explanations. But I didn't. Real betrayal doesn't make you impulsive. It makes you calculating. You wake up one day and realize you're walking on broken glass, so every step becomes careful, deliberate, quiet. That's how I moved through the next few days, quietly, watching, listening, collecting, not because I wanted revenge. Not then. Because I needed to understand how long I'd been sleeping beside a stranger. 3 days after the receipt, I finally found the missing piece. It was a Wednesday afternoon, warm, slow, the kind of day where the world feels half asleep. I had taken the day off from my small design business because my chest felt heavy and my mind wouldn't stop racing. I kept replaying everything. His sudden gym membership, his new cologne, the constant phone face down on the table, the sudden kindness whenever he felt guilty, the excuses, the perfume, and then the cafe receipt. All puzzle pieces waiting for the picture to reveal itself. Around 5 p.m., I entered the bedroom to change the sheets, something I normally did on weekends, but my hands needed a task. Something simple, something that didn't require thinking. As I pulled off the pillowcases, Daniel's phone lit up on the nightstand. A message preview glowed on the screen. My breath caught. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't pick it up. I didn't unlock anything. But the preview, the first line of the message, was enough. It said, "I miss you already." No name. Just the words. My hands stilled over the sheets. The message faded into darkness, but the words stayed burning in my mind. I stepped back from the nightstand like it was dangerous, like touching it would ignite something I wasn't ready for. I didn't need more proof. My marriage had spoken for itself. Still, I wanted the whole truth. And fate, or God, or simple human carelessness, handed it to me within the next 5 minutes. Daniel had left his work tablet on the chair. He rarely used it at home, only to check schedules or emails. But that day, it was open. The screen still glowing faintly, left on sleep mode. I didn't go toward it at first. My instincts battled inside me. If I look, I'll know. And if I know, nothing will be the same. But then I remembered something my mother used to say. Truth doesn't break a home. Lies do. So I sat down, gently, quietly, with a steadiness I didn't feel inside. I tapped the screen. It unlocked without a password. His work tablet didn't need one. The email app was open. Not his inbox. His drafts. One message sat half-written, barely typed, almost like he had been interrupted while writing it. I clicked it before I could convince myself not to. It opened, and there it was. Her name. Lily. A short, simple name. Pretty, soft, young. The email read, "I can't keep doing this. She keeps looking at me like she knows. I need time to think. Last night was too risky." My thumb trembled against the side of the tablet. Last night. The cafe receipt. The perfume. The tears in the dark. My chest squeezed until it hurt to breathe. There was no pretending now. No rationalizing. No hoping it wasn't what it was. Her name was real. Their affair was real. And my husband, the man I built a home with, shared a bed with, trusted with my soul, had been splitting his life between me and a woman named Lily. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. Instead, I felt cold. Not the kind of cold that comes from sadness. the kind that comes from realization. I clicked on another draft. This one was older. Shorter. "I'm sorry I left early today." She was suspicious. My hand covered my mouth. Another draft. "I'll get us more time next week." Then another. "Don't wear that perfume again." She noticed last time. My body stiffened. The perfume. The same scent he came home with that night. The strong, sweet one he pretended belonged to a coworker. Lily's perfume. Suddenly, memories rearranged themselves like puzzle pieces snapping into place. The gym nights. The sudden kindness. The secret smiles at his phone. The excuses. The missing hours. It all made sense. All of it. My heart didn't break loudly. It cracked softly, like a thin piece of glass under pressure. Silent. Fragile. Final. I sat there for a long time, minutes, maybe hours, staring at the screen until the words blurred. When I finally stood up, my body felt different. Older. Heavier. Wiser. And I remember thinking, this is how a woman changes. Not in anger. In clarity. I didn't touch anything else. Didn't copy. Didn't screenshot. Didn't send myself anything. I didn't need to, because the truth was no longer something outside of me. It was inside now, carved into bone. And the moment you know the truth, the moment your heart truly accepts it, your soul shifts. Mine did. In that quiet bedroom, under soft evening light, I understood something that would define the next chapter of my life. I had lost my marriage, but I had found myself. A version of me Daniel never expected. A version of me he would soon regret underestimating. When Daniel came home that night, I greeted him with a calm smile, the kind that hides storms behind it. He had no idea what I knew, and that was the most powerful moment I had felt in years, because betrayal takes your breath away. But truth gives it back. One slow, steady inhale at a time. If I had confronted him that night, he would have lied. Men like Daniel always do. He would have blamed stress, or work, or me, or anything that kept him from facing the mirror I was now holding up. But I stayed silent. Silence is a strange weapon. It doesn't stab. It waits. And waiting, when done with purpose, becomes power. The next morning, I woke before him. The house was dim, washed in that pale gray light that arrives before sunrise. He slept soundly beside me, mouth slightly open, hand resting on his chest, the same posture he'd had for years. For a moment, I watched him. Not lovingly, not angrily, just studying, trying to recognize the man I thought I married. Trying to understand how someone can promise forever in the same breath they plan an escape. At 6:07 a.m., his phone buzzed. He didn't wake. But I did. A preview appeared on the screen, one I recognized instantly. "Lily, good morning." Last night meant everything. My stomach tightened, but I didn't touch the phone. Instead, I memorized the exact time, the exact wording, the sender name, all of it. Documentation begins with observation, and I had just begun. When he finally woke, he stretched, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "You're up early." I smiled, a soft, meaningless one. Couldn't sleep. He ran a hand through his hair and sighed dramatically. "Work's been insane. I think I'm burning out." I didn't respond. When a liar hands you a script, don't read your lines. Let him scramble. He watched me for a moment, like he sensed the air had shifted. Then he shrugged it off and went to shower. The moment the water started running, I walked to his nightstand, picked up his phone, and calmly noted, "Message sender. Timestamp. Notification style. Phone lock behavior." I didn't unlock anything. I didn't cross a line. Not yet. But I was building a timeline. A pattern. Women are intuitive, dangerously so when hurt. But we're also precise when we're done being fooled. Over the next week, I collected everything. Not snooping. Just watching. Every late meeting. Every bad signal when I called. Every shower he took the moment he walked through the door. Every time he turned his phone face down, every time he left the room to take a call, I noticed how his smile changed, softer for someone else, colder with me. I noticed how he began using new phrases, new jokes, new playlists. People in love always leak pieces of their affair without realizing it, and I saved it all in a notebook I kept tucked inside my work bag. Nothing dramatic, just dates, times, behaviors, facts, because revenge is only effective when the truth is undeniable. And I wasn't after drama. I was after justice. One Thursday evening, while he was in the shower, a call came through. I didn't touch his phone. I didn't move toward it. I simply listened. A ringtone I had never heard before, soft, romantic, like something a 20-year-old girl might choose. It vibrated again, and again, 9 times, until eventually it stopped. Then a message preview lit up the screen. "Lily, I need to see you, please." I let out a slow breath. Not of jealousy, not even of sadness, but of clarity. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't casual. This wasn't a mistake. This was an affair. And they were in love, or whatever people call the illusion that destroys families. That night, I decided to go deeper. Not into his messages, not yet, but into his world. I asked him a simple question over dinner. "Daniel, who's Lily?" He froze. Not physically, he kept chewing, but emotionally. He turned to stone. Just a flicker. Just 1 second, but I caught it. He swallowed hard. Then he said, "Who?" "Lily," I repeated, carefully wiping my hands on a napkin. Her name came up somewhere, and I wasn't sure who she was. He forced a chuckle. "Oh, her. She's an intern. Does filing and coffee runs." "Why?" My face remained calm. Just curious. His shoulders relaxed with visible relief. "I barely talked to her. Don't worry." I stirred my spoon slowly, letting silence stretch between us. That's when he made his first mistake. He talked too much. You know how interns are always asking dumb questions, always hovering. She's harmless. Hovering, harmless. Barely talked to her. 3 contradictions in less than a minute. I smiled politely. Inside, something clicked into place. He wasn't just cheating. He was sloppy. And sloppy men are easy to expose. 2 days later, the opportunity I needed arrived like fate was hand-delivering justice to my doorstep. Daniel slipped in the shower. Not badly, just enough to bruise his hip and strain his wrist. He asked me to fetch his work tablet so he could check a document while he iced his side. When I handed it to him, he groaned and said, "Ugh, can you open the email app?" My fingers hurt. He gave me the PIN without thinking. 4 digits that unlocked everything. 1986. His birth year? Predictable. Lazy. Stupid. I opened the app and handed it back to him. But something else happened that he didn't notice. A small notification popped at the top. New message drafted. "Lily, did you tell her yet?" I saw it. He didn't. And in that split second, I realized something. He wasn't planning to leave me for her. Not yet, but he was preparing for the possibility. He was testing boundaries, playing both sides, keeping her hopeful while keeping me stable. And that was the moment my heartbreak transformed into something sharper. Not hatred, not rage, purpose. If he planned to drag me into his double life, I would make sure the truth shattered his. Not with violence, not with shouting, but with dignity, because dignity cuts deeper than revenge ever could. The next morning, I started phase 2. Not yelling, not confronting, collecting concrete evidence. The kind of evidence people can't run from. I began photographing. His schedule. His late-night texts lighting up the screen. His receipts. His sudden cash withdrawals. The cafe card punch card he accidentally left in his coat. The perfume stain on his shirt collar. The drafted messages to her. The time-stamped calls. Every detail. Every pattern. piece by piece. Quietly. Calmly. A storm building under a still surface. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't reckless. I was preparing. Preparing for the day I would place all of this in front of him and say, "Here, this is who you are." And then I would walk away with my head held high. He thought he was playing a secret game. He had no idea I had already joined and I was playing to win. By the end of the week, I had enough documentation to expose them both in any way I wanted. But exposure wasn't my goal. Not yet. My goal was to reclaim myself. To rebuild quietly. To strengthen quietly. To save myself quietly. Before I showed him the woman he feared most. And she was almost ready. People imagine that exposing a cheating husband is loud, dramatic, messy. But the truth is, when a woman has been silent long enough, her justice arrives like winter, quiet, unavoidable, and cold enough to change the landscape. I didn't rush. I didn't play games. I didn't corner him. I waited until the truth could no longer hide. And that day came so naturally, so perfectly, that even I couldn't have planned it better. 2 weeks after I began collecting evidence, Daniel's company celebrated the firm's annual awards night, a semi-formal gathering with employees, spouses, interns, and board members. Yes. Interns? Including one named Lily. Daniel had asked me to come with him, as always, trying to maintain the image of a perfect marriage. He bought me a new dress, soft navy blue, elegant, almost apologetically expensive. The gesture would have felt sweet a year ago. Now, it felt like a bribe. Still, I accepted it. Not for him. For me. There's a specific kind of strength that comes when a woman walks into a room knowing the truth. While the man beside her prays, she never discovers it. I could feel his anxiety the moment we arrived. He kept smoothing his shirt cuffs, fixing his tie, touching his hair, glancing at me with small, nervous smiles. Not the affectionate kind. The "I hope you don't destroy me in public" kind. I offered him soft, composed smiles in return. The kind that said nothing but meant everything. The hall buzzed with warmth, laughter, glass clinks, soft music. A photo booth in the corner. Balloons, a red carpet for awardees, groups of people chatting. Then I saw her. Lily. She was exactly as her name sounded, young, fresh-faced, pretty in a delicate, almost unfinished way. Barely mid-20s, hair tucked behind one ear. A pale pink dress that looked too soft for the woman she was pretending to be. When her eyes met Daniel's, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not fear. Possession. And that told me everything I needed to know. He had promised her something. Something more than stolen kisses and late-night texts. Suddenly, she walked toward us. Not shy. Not hesitant. Bold. It was the arrogance of a woman who believed she was winning. Daniel stiffened beside me. His wrist twitched as if he wanted to grab my arm and pull me away. But I didn't move. I wanted to see her up close. Hear her voice. Watch her speak the lies he had fed her. When she stopped in front of us, she smiled politely at me. The kind of smile women use when they're trying to hide that they've touched what doesn't belong to them. "Hi," she said. Her voice was soft, breathy. "I'm Lily. I work with Daniel." I nodded gently. "I've heard." Her eyes widened, just a shade, and Daniel shot me a quick, panicked glance. I let them sweat in silence for 3 long seconds. Then I smiled, warm, graceful, perfectly controlled. "Nice to meet you, Lily." She looked relieved. He looked terrified. That contrast was delicious. Alcohol flowed. People mingled. The music grew louder. But the tension between the 3 of us stayed quiet, coiled beneath every polite word. At one point, Daniel whispered to me, "Do you want some air?" He was restless, sweaty. His hands wouldn't stay still. I took a calm sip of my drink. "I'm fine." He stared at me like I was a bomb with an unknown timer. He wasn't wrong. The moment everything broke open wasn't planned by me. It was planned by arrogance. Lily's arrogance. At the end of the evening, the firm played a slideshow of photos from the past year, company trips, office events, charity drives. And then, a picture flashed. A picture that should never have been taken. There they were, Daniel and Lily, standing at a cafe table, laughing, heads leaning close, her hand brushing his arm, taken from outside the cafe window. It stayed on the screen for 3 long seconds. 3 seconds that felt like eternity. The room went silent. People froze mid-conversation. Daniel stopped breathing. Someone in the back whispered, "Isn't he married?" And just like that, the room shifted. Eyes turned to him, then to me, then to her. Lily's face drained of color. Daniel's mouth fell open, forming words that refused to come out. The air thickened, and I stood perfectly still, calm, tall, composed. Not a tear, not a flinch, only a quiet, devastating dignity. People started murmuring, "She's the intern, right? Oh my God, how long has this been going on? He brought his wife here. Poor woman. What a fool." Daniel grabbed my arm, hard. "It's nothing," he hissed. "It's just a photo from work. Don't do this here." I gently removed his hand. "Don't do what?" I asked softly. He blanched. Lily stepped forward. "It's not what it looks like." I held up a hand, silencing her. "My dear," I said quietly, "I already know exactly what it is." Her mouth opened, then shut. Daniel's eyes widened with fear. I reached into my purse, removed nothing, just looked at him. He knew what that purse held. Every receipt, every timeline, every voicemail, every photograph, every lie documented with dates and times. His soul left his body for a moment. I leaned in just enough that only he could hear me. "I'm not here to scream," I whispered. "I'm here to end the performance." Then I stepped back, straightened my shoulders, and addressed no one in particular. "Everyone, please, continue. It's been a lovely evening." And I walked out of the hall with quiet, devastating grace. The kind of exit that leaves scars. Behind me, I heard chaos whispers, gasps, footsteps. But I didn't turn back, because the moment betrayal becomes public, the marriage is already over. The only thing left is what kind of woman you choose to become afterward. And I chose to become the woman he feared most. A woman who doesn't fall apart. A woman who doesn't beg. A woman who doesn't fight for scraps. A woman who walks away with her dignity sharp enough to cut every lie behind her. I didn't look back, not once. The night air was cool against my skin, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. Not fully yet. Not completely. But enough. And enough is where healing always begins. Walking out of that hall felt like walking out of a burning building. Behind me were the flames, the whispers, the humiliation, the betrayal. Ahead of me was the cold night air, and the silence I desperately needed. For the first time in months, nobody was lying to me. Nobody was gaslighting me. Nobody was making me feel crazy. It was just me, my heartbeat, and the truth. But the real story didn't end that night. It began, because the aftermath of betrayal isn't loud. It's not a fight. It's not thrown dishes or screaming. It's paperwork. It's decisions. It's long nights of staring at ceilings. It's the funeral of a future you spent years building. Let me take you into that part, the part most people never talk about. When I walked into the house, everything felt different. The furniture hadn't moved. The lights were still on. The rugs still smelled like lavender. But I wasn't the same woman who left my home a few hours earlier. I took off my heels, placed my purse on the table, and sat on the couch, in complete silence. Tears didn't come, not yet. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. I finally understood something I should have understood long ago. When someone shows you their priorities, believe them. When someone shows you their character, remember it. When someone shows you their loyalty, Don't beg for it again. After an hour, the door burst open. Daniel rushed inside, eyes wild, sweating, breathing hard. Listen to me, he began. I held up one hand. Don't, I said calmly. Not tonight. But I can explain. You've already explained enough, I whispered. He froze. Because he could hear something in my voice he'd never heard before. Finality. Here's what most people don't realize. A man doesn't panic when he's caught cheating. He panics when the woman stops reacting. And that's exactly what happened. When I stopped crying, when I stopped questioning him, when I stopped begging, his power over me evaporated. He had no control left, no emotional leverage, no way to twist my mind anymore. And that terrified him. Just talk to me, he pleaded, pacing like a trapped animal. Tell me what you want. I looked at him, really looked. This was the man I thought would grow old with me. The man I defended. The man I trusted. Now he looked like a stranger wearing his face. Calmly, I said, I want you to sleep in the guest room. He blinked. Like the words hit him harder than a slap. That's it, he asked. For tonight, I replied. We'll talk tomorrow. He opened his mouth. But I walked past him, into the bedroom, and closed the door. Without another word, that silence hurt him more than any screaming could have. He was already awake when I came downstairs, eyes swollen, jaw clenched, coffee untouched. Are we getting a divorce? He asked quietly. I didn't answer immediately. I sat down across from him, calm, composed, steady. Then I said, I don't make decisions based on anger. I make decisions based on patterns. And you've shown me a very clear pattern. His eyes filled with panic. Please, give me one chance. One, I whispered. Daniel, how many chances have I already given you that you didn't even realize? He swallowed hard. I placed a folder on the table. The evidence I'd gathered. Receipts. Screenshots. Voicemails. Everything. He stared at it like it was a loaded gun pointed at him. You don't have to open it, I said. I already know what's inside. Slowly, he reached toward the folder. Then stopped. Guilt kept his hand frozen. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. I tilted my head slightly and asked, then why didn't you act like a man who wanted to keep me? He broke completely. His shoulders shook. His hands trembled. Tears rolled down his face. It was the first time I'd ever seen him sob. But here's the truth women need to hear. A man crying for losing you is not the same as a man crying for loving you. Don't confuse regret with repentance. Don't confuse fear with love. His tears weren't about me. They were about consequences. And consequences were long overdue. By noon, I had made up my mind. I walked upstairs, packed a small suitcase, not everything, just enough. Clothes, toiletries, important papers. When I came back down, he stood at the bottom of the stairs. Where are you going? He whispered, voice cracking. To my sister's, I said softly. For how long? I looked him straight in the eyes. I don't know. He flinched. Because he realized something. A woman doesn't need to slam doors. She doesn't need to throw things. She doesn't need to scream. The quiet leaving is the most dangerous leaving. It's the kind a man cannot undo. I walked past him, opened the front door, and stepped outside. He didn't follow. He couldn't, because he knew if he tried to stop me, I'd never come back even to talk. The house felt lighter when I left, as if it, too, was relieved. The first night at my sister's was strange. No familiar bed, no routine, no soft breathing beside me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was emptiness. And emptiness is scary because it forces you to meet yourself again. For years, I had been his wife. His support, his stability, his excuse. Now, I was just me. I cried that night. Not for him, not for us, but for the version of myself that believed I was loved properly. Grief isn't about losing a person. It's about losing the story you told yourself. And I had told myself a beautiful story. One he never deserved. But here's the powerful part. When that story ended, a stronger one began. A story where I wasn't the betrayed wife. I was the reborn woman. People think the hardest part of leaving a man is the leaving. It isn't. The hardest part is staying gone. Because after betrayal, there's a strange kind of quiet. A quiet where you start noticing the weight of your own heartbeat and the shape of your own loneliness. But that quiet also becomes something else. A mirror. A teacher. A beginning. And that's where my story shifted. From being the wife he cheated on, to the woman he never saw coming. My sister's guest room became my little sanctuary. A small bed. A soft lamp. A window that overlooked her garden. I kept the curtains open at night. Not for the moonlight, but because it reminded me I was finally out of a dark place. I spent those first few days doing nothing but breathing. Real breathing. Deep, slow, honest breaths, the kind you forget to take when you're living in survival mode. My phone kept buzzing. Texts, calls, voicemails, all from Daniel. I didn't respond. Not out of revenge, but because I had nothing left to say to a man who had already heard every version of me. A crying version. A forgiving version. A pleading version. A numb one. Now, I was silent. And silence is the one language a guilty person can never endure. On the fourth day, I agreed to meet him in a public cafe, not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I wanted to hear the truth without being gaslit, without being manipulated, without being interrupted. He arrived early. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. His eyes softened when he saw me, but I didn't feel anything. The spell had broken. You look different, he said quietly. I feel different, I replied. He swallowed. Please, tell me what I need to do. Fix yourself, I said. Not me, not us, just you. He reached for my hand instinctively. I gently moved it away. For the first time, he felt a kind of rejection he couldn't argue against, a kind he had no excuse for. I leaned forward and said, I'm not your wife right now. I'm a woman healing from what you did. His face fell. Not because he disagreed, but because he knew it was true. I didn't involve screaming or dramatics. I didn't make threats. I simply consulted a lawyer. A calm, professional woman who looked over my evidence and said, You handled this with more clarity than most people ever manage. You didn't react. You documented. I nodded. You have a strong case for divorce with full rights, she added. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of grief. Not because of the divorce, but because of the years I invested in a future that never existed. But I signed the first papers. My hand didn't shake, not even once. That's when I realized I wasn't losing a marriage. I was reclaiming myself. I didn't expose them. I didn't gossip. I didn't post anything. But truth has a way of traveling, especially when two people try to build a love story on a foundation of lies. Her coworkers found out. His office found out. Their little secret wasn't so little anymore. I heard through someone I trusted that she accused him of ruining her life. He told people she misled him. Both lies. Both pathetic. Two guilty people scrambling to rewrite the narrative. Their affair didn't survive exposure. It collapsed under its own selfishness. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a single finger. The universe handled it for me. My healing wasn't dramatic. It was slow, quiet, beautiful. Morning walks, journaling, therapy sessions that opened wounds I didn't even know I carried. Cooking for myself, something I hadn't done in years. Standing in front of a mirror and seeing a whole woman, not a broken one. I began dressing differently, not for attention, but because I wanted to see color again, life again. I started saying no more often, not to be rude, but because I had spent too many years saying yes to things that drained me. I even laughed again. A real laugh, the kind that surprises you. That's when I realized he didn't just lose his wife. He lost the best version of her, the one he forced into existence by betraying her. Almost 2 months later, I went to a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I wasn't planning to stay long. I wasn't planning to see him. But life has a way of showing you exactly what you need to see. He walked in 15 minutes after I did. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. And he froze, because the woman standing before him wasn't the one he walked all over. My back straight, my smile soft, my confidence calm, steady, unshakable. He approached me slowly. "You look incredible," he whispered. "Thank you," I replied gently. "I feel happy." He blinked, because he wasn't a part of my happiness anymore. "Is it too late?" he asked softly. I smiled. "It was too late the moment you chose someone else while having me at home," I said. There was no anger in my voice, no bitterness, just truth. He nodded, defeated, not by me, but by his own choices. I finalized the divorce 2 weeks later. No drama, no shouting, just a signature. And freedom. I bought a small apartment with warm lighting, wooden floors, and a balcony where I now drink tea at sunset. I got a promotion at work. I started a book club with my sister. I learned to travel alone. And one night, as I sat on my balcony, watching the sky turn orange, I realized I had become the woman he feared most. The woman who didn't need him anymore. Not to be loved. Not to be validated. Not to be whole. I was whole on my own. You know, people often think betrayal is the end of a story. It isn't. Sometimes it's the doorway you never would have opened if life hadn't pushed you toward it. When I look back now, I don't see the affair, or the other woman, or the papers I signed with shaking hands. I see the woman I became because of it. A woman who learned that healing isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't need an audience. Healing is waking up one morning and realizing your heart beats without fear. Healing is walking past the place where your world once collapsed and feeling absolutely nothing. Healing is forgiving yourself for all the times you accepted less than you deserved. If there's anything I learned, it's this. Being betrayed doesn't make you weak. Staying where you aren't valued does. And the moment you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, everything in your life begins to shift. Your mind gets clearer. Your steps get lighter. Your future becomes yours again. Some days you'll still feel the sting. Some nights you'll still wonder why someone you loved couldn't choose honesty. But over time, you start to understand. Their betrayal was a reflection of them, not a measurement of you. I didn't become stronger because he broke me. I became stronger because I rebuilt myself with pieces he could never touch again. And if you're listening to my story right now, if you're sitting with your own pain, your own unanswered questions, let me tell you something gently. You will rise to, not because someone will come to save you, but because the strength you need is already waiting inside you. All you have to do is choose yourself. Now tell me, if you were in my place, would you have done what I did?